All right, first let's go over the review questions at the end of Chapter 5. So number 1, a structure that allows repeated execution of a block of statements is a loop. So number 1 is C. Number 2, the body of a while loop can consist of either a single statement or a block of statements. And that's the same with a for loop, and that's the same with a do while also. So number 1 is C, number 2 is C. Number 3, a loop that never ends is called a D-infinite loop. So remember, there's a difference. An infinite loop will run forever. With an indefinite loop, you don't know how many times it's going to run. And with a definite loop, it must run an exact number of times. So you should understand the difference because in one form or other, all three of those are on the test. So CCD for the first three. Number 4, which of the following is not required of a loop control variable? It's not required to reset it to its initial value when the loop ends. All right. Sometimes you might want to, but it's not required that you do that. So number 4 is A. Number 5, a while loop with an empty body, so just curly braces. All right. It has no statements in it. So 4 is A, 5 is B, statements. Number 6, a loop for which you do not know the number of iterations. So number 6 is what's known as an indefinite loop. It'll run indefinitely. You don't know in advance. So 6 is B. Number 7, what is a major advantage of using a for loop as opposed to a while loop? You get less code because, as it says, D is the answer. You do all your initialization, your testing, and your altering of a loop control variable. It's all done in the same place. So again, the answer to number 7 is D. A for loop, number 8, is A. It must always contain 2 semicolons. So 7 is D, 8 is A. Number 9, in a for statement, the section that comes before the first semicolon executes once, because that's the initialization. You only want to initialize one time. So 9 is A. Number 10, the 3 sections of the for loop are initialization, test, and increment. This is actually wrong because this can be decrement. So it really should be incrementing or decrementing, depending on what you want to do. All right. If you want to make sure that a loop always executes at least once, you should use a do loop. Sometimes they're called do loops, sometimes they're called do while loop. But don't say while, don't say for, don't say if. You'd say, well, an if only executes one time, but it's a loop that they're asking for in here. So number 11 is A. Number 12 is also A. The loop control variable is checked at the bottom of what kind of loop? I'm sorry, it's B. So number 12 is B. 11 is A and 12 is B, a do loop. They're both do loops. 11 and 12. Number 13, a for loop is an example of a pretest loop. 14 is also B because for loops and while loops are both pretest loops, as opposed to a do or a do while, which is a post-test loop. So 13 and 14 are both B pretest. Number 15. Wow, brother. I didn't touch it that time. When a loop is placed within another loop, those loops are nested. You're hearing a lot of these questions over and over again, so hopefully you'll know now what's going to be on the test. Right now I'm looking at having the written on Monday of next week for 5, the written for 6 on Tuesday, We'll go over 7 and 8 Wednesday and Thursday, kind of like we're doing now, and then we'll have the hands-on for 5 and 6 next week. That makes sense? All right. Number 16, what does the following code segment display? Well, since A is 1, let's see. Remember that? Since they put a semicolon at the end, it's never going to display that. So it displays nothing because technically there's an error. And I believe if you put those in there, I don't think that it gets flagged by the system. It assumes you know what you're doing, which is not a good assumption to make. Number 17, what is the output of this? Well, S is less than 4, plus S. Write S. S is 1, well, it's less than 4. Add 1 to it. So now it'll be 2, and write that out. I would think the answer here is D. The book shows B, but I think the book's wrong. I would have put D for that one. There's no question like that on the test, though, so you don't have to worry about it. What's the output here? Again, we're going backwards from 5 while it's greater than 0, so our output for 18 would be C, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Number 19. I don't think that one's right either. Because 0 less than 3, so it'll print out F, which is 0. It'll do it again, which will print out 1. It'll do it again, which will print out 2. I think the answer to 19 is B. If you disagree with me, let me know. But I think it's B. Again, there's no question like that on your test. I would never test you on something like that. And number 20 is C. All right, if you've got this, all right, you can take that out, your test review for Chapter 5. Give you a second, hopefully you can bring that up on the screen if you're keying it in, or if you're writing it down, whatever you're doing. So this up here, if you look on the screen, that's potentially 3 questions. Does that make sense? And technically, this is the answers that they have in the book, but technically it's any of these loops. So it's a while, or it's a do, or it's a for. Any loop. Within every loop, a Boolean expression is evaluated to determine whether or not the body will execute. Copy this again. I don't know if it's in there later, but just in case. This is wrong. That's wrong. That should be do. And this now it's right. And believe me, when I put this down, I'm taking what the author said. So this is right. As always, if the author, I use her key, but she screws up. That's why I reserve the right to take any of those questions and just throw them out, basically. And technically, for a definite loop, you can use any of them. So again, this would really be while, would be this. Sorry, not trying to confuse you with that, but I want to make sure that you understand what is going on with it. Everybody have that? All right, number 2. A block is one or more statements within curly braces. It's always recommended that you use curlies, even if there's only one statement. But if there's only one, you don't have to. When I talked to Charles this morning and I told him how we have several people who are slow typists, he said, Jeff, they don't have to just do May the Speak, and if they look online, there are actually ways to learn, for you to learn typing that do it through games. So if you're a gamer, probably they're probably hokey games, but you could at least use games. But you have to start picking it up. Yeah.
That's the cheating.
No, if you've got that, that's not a problem. You want to do it that way, you know. But you know what? With me taping these lectures, that is speech to text. So,
Yeah.
number 3 is nested loops, and it's a loop within a loop. You already know that. That's 3 different questions on the test. So you improve loop performance by using prefix. Don't say postfix for that one. The block of statements is the loop body, so that's what's within the curlies. And each loop, each time you go through a loop, it's known as a loop iteration. Again, all 3 of these are on the test, and it's possible they're on more than once. In other words, there might be a question and a definition at the end. All right, number 5. Again, several questions. I think that's supposed to be pre-test and post-test. For loops and while loops are pre-test. The do or do while loop is a post-test. That is on the test in at least one question, and again, it might be on more than one question. I don't remember. Number 6, Nested loops have an inner loop and an outer loop. The outer loop is the one on the outside. The nested one is the inner loop, the one on the inside. Number 7, it's an accumulator. You will almost always initialize it to 0. If you'd all look up on the screen, because this is something you have to know whether it's on a test or not. All right. If I say this, int LCV equals 0, that's my loop control variable. All right, so now I've got 4 LCV, let's just say here int LCV. Or LCV equals 0, LCV less than or equal to 10, plus plus LCV. All right? And here we're going to call this int sum. This is almost like the program I wrote for you. We're saying sum plus equals LCV. It's important that you realize LCV, what this is, yeah, it's a loop control variable, but it's also, it's a counter. It's counting from 1 to 10. All right, this is an accumulator. Because that's what a lot of beginning people do, is they mix up a counter with an accumulator. An accumulator is getting bigger. It's accumulating something as the program's going on. A counter is just used, it's a placeholder. All right, it's literally just counting. Number 8. Again, I did not touch that. Stop it. Short circuit evaluation. I think you've even had this on another test. So again, if it's an AND condition and the first part's false, you don't check the second part. If it's an OR and the first part's true, you don't check the second part. Everybody's got that one? All right, number 9. Loop fusion is combining 2 loops, 2 or more loops, into 1. Number 10, users' actions, or by user actions, something like that. Number 11, while. You could make a case and say it's any of those three, but what she used there was a while. 12, sentinel value. Thirteen, for loop. Fourteen, scope. And the last one are the definitions. Is that big enough where you can read it? 'Cause that's all of them. So the rest of the period, you've got time to go and work on the homework. And you all know now that the homework, I mentioned I'll take any homework from chapters 1 through 4 through the end of the week, and 5 and 6 through the end of next week. Hopefully you all know this, that when I put this here, that's loop control variable. I just tried to get it to fit on one line. If you get time, I will tell you that even though we went over it a little bit last semester in JavaScript, Chapter 6, which we go over tomorrow, is on arrays. That is the hardest chapter out of all the chapters we've gone through in the book thus far. So if you get a chance to look at it, skim through it, read it, whatever, probably be in your best interest to do that. Everybody has all those, correct?